And now, live from Level 5 Productions on the island of Milleronia, it's The Larry Miller Show. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America, and everyone who just loves good old St. Valentine. Hi, folks, and welcome back to The Larry Miller Show. I'm Larry Miller, but in a way, aren't we all? And boy, is it beautiful. We're not on Milleronia today. It's a gorgeous day. Colonel Jeff and I are back on the mainland, and we're at my house. I felt like saying one of my houses, but this is the one we have. I don't know why that would be I suppose, braggadocio to say, well, I'm at one of my houses. Why is that better? I guess I don't understand. Maybe you do, folks. Let me know. But, we're at the studio in my house now with the two doggies, and I don't want to disturb them because they're just lying around now here on the studio floor, and we like that. And they like it, too. But it's just gorgeous. And one of the reasons I am here now is because of, well, St. Valentine's Day. And I'll tell you about that soon. And, you can trust me on that. Boy, oh boy, though, it's gorgeous. And that music, as you know, makes me so happy. And Colonel Jeff, too. It's the Elliot Rosenquantz Orchestra and the Sheila Bandy Dancers, featuring boy tenor Jim Broderick, asking the musical question, does Einstein's theory of relativity explain why I can't stand my brother-in-law? Only if he can't stand you, too. I don't know how bad it is between you two. And, the truth is, he probably likes you and he probably wants you to like him. But I know, and everyone out there knows, that sometimes, boy, you just can't take it. Now, that sounds like the case with you, Jim, that, but it's a good joke and a good question. Does Einstein's theory of relativity explain why I can't stand my brother-in-law? No, pal, I'm afraid only you can answer that. And I think we all know what the answer is. No, you just can't stand him. And by the Larry Miller Store. That's right, folks. Today I'm going to tell you about the Larry Miller Store because I want you to patronize the Larry Miller Store, and so does Colonel Jeff. And you know what? We have 3 T-shirt designs there available for gentlemen, ladies, and even doggies. That's right. And on our website today, we're going to show you a picture Colonel Jeff took of my doggy, Ozzy, the good boy dog. And you'll see a picture also of what the doggy shirt, and this one says, keep calm and Larry on. I love that saying, and it shows me with a crown on it. And it's going to be on Ozzy. And we'll show you a couple of pictures of it on its own, without Ozzy. And as Colonel Jeff said before, when we went to make a cup of coffee upstairs in the coffee place, the kitchen, that is, and the pantry, come to think of it. But when we went upstairs, Ozzy said, boy, I hope Ozzy likes it. And I said, I have a feeling he's just going to be puzzled by it. That it's just, he won't like it or hate it. He'll just be sitting there wagging his tail wearing this thing. And he's the sweetest dog in the world. And then about every 11 or 12 seconds, he'll just turn his head over and start trying to bite it off, just trying to get rid of it that he's wearing. But that's dogs too. God bless him. You'll see, and we'll see too. And you know what? Go to the Larry Miller Store, and we have a way to get there. You go to our website, which, as you know, I hope you know, is LarryMillerPodcast.com. Who's on the mountain? Tom Mix. I like that it goes down a little at the end. Oh, Colonel Jeff picked some good ones. And At any rate, you go to our website, and we will have a link, right? I'm asking him that question. Yes, it's a link that will take you to the Larry Miller Store. And it explains, hey, go to the Larry Miller Store from the Larry Miller Show, right? And so please do that, though. Go to our website and click on the store link. And again, remember that's LarryMillerPodcast.com. Who's on the mountain, Tom Mix? Boy, I think I'm always in a pretty good mood, but I'm just in a cheerful mood today. And everything makes me smile. And that's, again, as long as the dogs don't wake up and go crazy. But at any rate, do that, folks. Go to the Larry Miller Store, and we'll be glad you did. And you'll be glad you did. Buy a couple of T-shirts and see what you think. And that brings me to my favorite part of the show, the joke of the week. That's right, and this is a good one. Colonel and I both like this one, and it was sent in by a listener, Brent Wayne Waters. And boy, that's nice. It sounds like a water hazard in the 19th century, though. Brent Wayne Waters, though, he sent us a joke, and we liked it very much. And here it is. A young fellow who's from a hillbilly area and way out back there in our mountains, somewhere in Kentucky, and he decides he's going to go to New York. He wants to see New York City, and he's going to go there. And one of the women in his little hollow there says to him, she's an older woman, and she says, well, now, I heard you were going to New York. You can do me a favor if you don't mind. And she says, my son lives there, but I lost his phone number and I haven't spoken to him in a while. Would you do me a favor and look him up and just tell him to, tell him to call me? And he says, sure, why, I'd be happy to. What's his name? And she says, John Dunn. And he says, I'll be glad to. So he does that. He gets on a train and goes to one city and then gets on another train and goes to another city. And eventually it gets him to New York City. And he gets off that train. And you know what? He's really looking forward to a great trip. And as soon as he gets off that train, he sees a giant investment house that says in the fanciest limestone with big columns. And it says on top, Dun and Bradstreet. And he says to himself, well, how do you like that? I found him right off the bat. And he does. He walks into Dun and Bradstreet there, and he goes up to there. Oh, it's a very big arched building with marble and more columns. You need plenty of columns in these things. And he goes up to the clerk at the desk, and there's a security guard there, and there's a young woman who's guiding people all along wherever they have to go. And she says, good afternoon, sirs. And he says to her, do you have a John? And she says, yes, we do. It's right down the big hallway here and just to the left. And he says, thank you. And she says, thank you. And he says, smiles at the guard, and he heads off there down the big hallway there. And just as he gets to the door to the bathroom opens, and the fellow walks out. And he says, are you done? And the guy says, yes. And he says, call your mother. That's a pretty good joke. I like that one. It's so, but that's not what she... And it reminded me, I said to the colonel, you know what? I remember, and I'm saying this to Brent, who was nice enough to send it in. It's a great joke, Brent. Thank you. And I heard that joke from a comedian in the Catskills when I was 7 or 8 years old. And my parents, we were in the Catskills quite a bit. And my father is in the JWV, the Jewish War Veterans. And so we took him and my mom and me and my sister, and we saw this comedian, and he told this joke, and I remember it. And I remember it as soon as, of course, as soon as we we saw Brent's joke, and I said, and I can't remember, I told Colonel Jeff, I can't remember why, but he had an Irish accent doing it. Not the comedian had an Irish accent, but he did the character with an Irish accent. So that the punchline, I remember the punchline was, "Are you done?" And, yes, well, call your mother. And I remember him doing it that way, and I don't know why. I don't know how or why, but I remember that joke. And everyone laughed, and the Colonel said, well, maybe he was from Ireland in the joke, and that's why he has the accent. And I said, maybe, I can't remember. But by the way, if one of you knows the older version of that, or why he had an Irish accent in the joke, please let us know. In fact, right on the podcast, LarryMillerPodcast.com, right on our website. Who's on the mountain? Tom Mix? I thought I'd sneak that in on the Colonel, but you can't. He's not someone you sneak in on. Anyway, thank you, Brent. That was a good joke. And that brings me to my second favorite part of the show, the Poetry Corner. Well, that string quartet always makes me feel good. They're a good string quartet. I'd like to walk up to them and say, "Are you done?" At any rate, this is first of all, it's written by Allen Ginsberg. He was, as I'm sure you know, that he was a poet very popular in the 1950s and the 1960s, and very artistic. And as the Colonel was saying, didn't write a lot of poems that rhymed. And, well, we like poems that rhyme here. I like all kinds of poems, but you know what? This one rhymes. And I hope you like it, because we do too. It's called Father Death Blues by Allen Ginsberg. Hey, Father Death, I'm flying home. Hey, poor man, you're all alone. Hey, old daddy, I know where I'm going. Father Death, don't cry any more. Mama's there, underneath the floor. Brother Death, please mind the store. Old Auntie Death, don't hide your bones. Old Uncle Death, I hear your groans. Oh, Sister Death, how sweet your moans. Oh, children Deaths, go breathe your breaths. Sobbing breasts'll ease your deaths. Pain is gone, tears take the rest. Genius Death, your art is done. Lover Death, your body's gone. Father Death, I'm coming home. Guru Death, your words are true. Teacher Death, I do thank you for inspiring me to sing this blues. Buddha Death, I wake with you. Dharma Death, your mind is new. Sangha Death will work it through. Suffering is what was born. Ignorance made me forlorn. Tearful truths I cannot scorn. Father Breath, once more, farewell. Birth you gave was no thing ill. My heart is still, as time will tell. Well, that's pretty good. And I think for Allen Ginsberg, that's kind of a cheerful poem. I mean, it's all about death and people. Yes, everyone's dying and dead, and what do you say to them? But you know what? I'm glad we have that here. Thank you, Allen Ginsberg, for Father Death Blues. And by the way, you may be interested in knowing, you may not know, that in 1957, Ginsberg's poem Howl was the subject of an obscenity trial in San Francisco. The judge ruled that Howl was not obscene, and the judge that ruled on it added, "Would there be any freedom of press or speech if one must reduce his vocabulary to vapid innocuous euphemisms. And I wanted to put that in there, and the Colonel and I both wanted me to put that in there, mainly because we have no idea what it means. They have enough, speaking of poetic words, if the judge then said, would there be any freedom of the press or speech if one must reduce his vocabulary to vapid, innocuous euphemisms? You got me, number one. Number two, what does that mean? And, that's why you're a judge. If you speak that way, people are going to eventually say, you should be up there on the big chair with the black robe on, because no one needs to understand you there either. In any case, folks, that's a good one. And thank you to Mr. Ginsburg. And that brings me to my third favorite part of the show. MMM. Triple M, the magic movie moment. Oh, boy. And this is a good one. It's a very good movie. There have been, a handful of movies made on this, but you'll know why by the name. It's called The St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Made in 1967, directed by Roger Corman, starring Jason Robards as Al Capone, George Segal as one of his big hitmen, Pete Gusenberg, and Jean Hale, the beautiful Jean Hale, as Myrtle, who plays George Segal's wife in the movie, in their apartment. And, Joe Campanella, so many great actors in this thing. And I remember seeing that while I was a kid, and I remember really liking it. And, by the way, for the record, that Jason Robards, I mentioned, plays Al Capone, and he was older than Al Capone was. And I was just saying to the Colonel before we started on the show that I like that in movies when the characters are the age of the stars playing them. Now, I know, maybe you know, that Al Capone was 29 at the end of his big run in the 20s there of the 1920s of being the big cheese in Chicago, murdered a lot of people and made a lot of money on illegal liquor. But, so he, in his 20s, he became the big boss when he was around 20. And so that's just a little young for me. That wouldn't quite make sense, to have him played by a 20-year-old actor. At any rate, it's a very good movie. And there's a scene in it. George Segal, I remember, a great actor. What a wonderful actor. And, he was playing Pete Gusenberg, as I mentioned, the one of the killers that Capone sends to do the killing. And at that point, Pete Gusenberg and his wife, Myrtle, in the movie, are in their apartment. And she's played by Jean Hale, a wonderful actress, beautiful actress, and who's married to Dabney Coleman, by the way, speaking of a great actor. And she's married to him for, years, 23 years, I think. And they eventually got divorced. And they had kids, and at any rate, in this scene, George Segal, he's a killer. And he's thinking to himself, he's checking one of his guns, and he's thinking to himself, he looks over at his wife, Myrtle. They're in a small apartment in Chicago, and she's, bleached blonde and looking pretty good, though. I mean, for the part she was playing. She's a beautiful woman, and he's thinking to himself, you know what, maybe I could just get rid of her. There are lots more like her out there, and so it's a loving marriage, and, but at that point, she says to him that, she got a fur coat that day, and she wants him to like it and to approve that she went out on her own and got a fur coat because, someone like, I think there's a pretty good rule of thumb that if you're a hitman for Al Capone in the 1920s, you probably don't want your wife going out to buy things that, he would have said to her, that, why didn't you say something? I would have gotten you one. I would have gotten you a fur coat for free. And all I'd have to do is kill 5 or 6 guys. But they start getting angry at each other. They start yelling at each other. and they start fighting. And it's going to be, she's going to swing at him, and he's just, what are you doing? Hey, come here, and, and hey, you shut up, no, you shut up. And then I remember she knees him right in the crotch. But I mean, bullseye. And he gasps and grunts and collapses and, grabs her from this and that. And, at that point, I remember being a kid. I was there with my parents and my sister and me in the theater when it first came out in 1967. So I was just a kid too, but you know what? I remember thinking, this does not look like a good marriage. I don't think I'd want a marriage like this. Maybe is that what marriage is? And then I remember just, glanced at my sister, and I don't know what she was thinking, but then I looked over at my folks who was sitting there, and I remember thinking, that can't be their marriage. So I think it's going to be okay if someday I get married and have one like my parents, where, your wife doesn't knee you in the crotch just because you're angry she got a fur coat. In any case, it's a terrific movie. It's very, very good. The St. Valentine's Day Massacre from 1967. And it's perfect to mention now. I hope you see it if you haven't, and I hope you see it again if you've seen it lots of times. And you know what? Well, they had a lot of illegal liquor in those days from Al Capone and all his guys there. But, I like, and Colonel Jeff likes too, we always have a cup of coffee. I always make when he comes here to our house, or on Milleronia when he comes to our studio there in our other house. Hey, I guess I could say that, hey, this is one of my houses. But you know what? I like coffee, and so does Colonel Jeff, and this is made with those little canisters that you put in the coffee maker, and you push the lid down, and it punctures the coffee canister, and you slip a cup under there, and I've shown you some of the cups we have here, too, by the way. We have, it's fun. Coffee cups are fun. And you know what? I went to Ralph's, this is a couple of months ago at this point, and I needed some coffee creamer. Jeff and I both like it black, but I suddenly thought, hey, wait a minute. What if I got us some coffee cream? Coffee creamers that are plain, that have stuff in them, whatever it is. And I did that. I went over to the milk section and got some milk. Love milk. And I got some eggs. Love eggs. And right above the milks, they have a big selection of coffee creamers. And I always get the Kroger whole milk. They're not big bottles. They have some big ones, but I think this one is about 12 ounces, something like that. But I like that. I like the size of it, and I like grabbing it. And they didn't have them. They were out of it. This was around rush hour, about 5:30 or 6 of an afternoon here in our neighborhood, at home, here on the mainland. And they didn't have one. And I said, I'm sorry to see that. They only had the Giganto bottles of cream, half and half. But I didn't want that. I like the whole milk if I'm ever going to put anything in. And, well, I looked in the back through the big bottles of milk, because right in the back is the department there where all the fellas work, where they load things in and take things out. And I was looking for someone so I could knock on the glass door or just open it and yell, "Hey, buddy," and just say, do you have any more Kroger whole milk? Or can you take some of those? There was one there that if someone just pushed it from the back, that was on the back of the rack, someone just pushed it, I could have it. I couldn't reach it. It was another 3 feet to go there, or on that slot. And there was no one there. And that's not the wrong thing to ask of anyone. If you saw someone walking along, carrying a giant lemon or something, or whatever else they do back there, but could be a giant lemon, but I couldn't find anyone. And then I saw on one other rack, in one other slot, the Silk hazelnut almond creamer, which is just fun to say, but not fun to drink. I got that so that the next day we were on the mainland, and so the next day when Colonel Jeff came by for the show, I could say, well, let's go get a cup of coffee, and we always do. We start chatting about this and that and things, well, that might be on the show. And then I said, let's try this, and he felt the same way I did. Well, how do you like that? Silk hazelnut almond creamer. All right, sure, let's do that. So we both did. I made us each a cup of coffee, and we stood there and we put some in and stirred it in, and we took a sip, and it was not good. It was ungood. It was not okay. It wasn't bad, by the way. I don't mean it had gone bad or anything was wrong with it. It was perfectly the way it ought to be. But I thought to myself, and Colonel Jeff thought the same thing, that silk hazelnut almond creamer, well, it wasn't right for us, for a cup of joe. And I got, the next day I went there, and they had some more Kroger whole milk that I like, and there was plenty in there, so I could just reach up and take one. But, folks, it was worth mentioning to me because I still haven't thrown the silk hazelnut almond creamer out. Now, that's the kind of thing you ought to throw out. It's not good. No offense to all the silk folks, but you don't need me as a customer. And you don't need Colonel Jeff either. And you know what, though, folks? Once it goes past a week, and then 2 weeks sitting there in the fridge, I don't know if this stuff goes bad or stays good or just... And now it's been 2 months, almost 3 months. It's just been sitting there. We haven't had another drop out of it. I don't want any. You don't want any. I mean, and my wife and none of the kids want anything. It just sits there. And I thought to myself, is that how it's going to be with this? It's going to... why aren't I throwing it out? Does it feel improper somehow to toss something out that's still brand new, if that can be used to describe this stuff? I think it's going to be there, and I think it might just be there until we sell the house. And we're not selling the house. I mean, let's say another 30 years, and God willing, we'll all just finally say, you know what, let's sell the house. And sure enough, whoever buys the house is going to open that fridge and see the silk hazelnut almond creamer. And I'll bet you they'll say the same thing. Well, how do you like that? I wonder if it's still good. And the guy's wife will say, oh, it's still good. That stuff never goes bad. And they'll both feel the same way. So they'll make themselves a cup of coffee, pour in the silk hazelnut almond creamer, stir it in, take a sip, and they'll say, wow, that's not good at all, is it? And they, too, will say, why don't we just go to the local Ralph's and get some Kroger whole milk, which is what we like. And they'll do that. But I'll bet you $1 they won't throw out the silk hazelnut almond creamer. And it won't feel right to them either. I'll bet it's there until they sell the house. In fact, there could be 10 more owners of this house, and the same container of silk hazelnut almond creamer, they will all do the same thing, make a cup of coffee, put some of that in, and they will all react as we did, it's just not at all good. And they'll leave it there, and they won't throw it out. So you know what? One of these days, folks, I mean, when you clean the fridge where there are things that have been sitting there way too long, like some kind of stew that's about 2.5 weeks old, where it's past the stew point of where you want to say, time to throw this out. I think then I might just reach up there and toss out the silk hazelnut almond creamer. But then I'll put another bottle of Kroger whole milk in there and smile, and the ending will be happy. Well, you know what, though? I have a happy ending and a good story about Valentine's Day. I'm not sure my wife is that big a fan of Valentine's Day to do that, but I am. I wanted to get her something nice, and I don't get her fancy things anymore, like jewelry or nice clothes or I don't even know what else, but I mean, I'm not a good jewelry buyer. I used to buy her a lot of jewelry. Whenever I went on the road, I picked some jewelry up. And you know what? I'm not sure she ever really liked the things I got. I don't have a very good eye for it. I know when I like it, but I don't think that's, and plus jewelry is, as you know, it's pretty expensive. And I'm not talking about the $87 ones, the earrings you see on TV, but I mean jewelry. And that, could be 500, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. And that's if you're not arguing. I mean, that's if you're in a good mood, if you care about each other. And so you know what? I don't do that. And there's something around here, and a friend recommended this. It's a hair place. It's for women. It's called Dry Bar, in fact. And they're not a sponsor. I love saying that because it's true. But everyone loves it. All the women in this whole area like it for a 10-mile radius, and they all love it there. And it's just you get I don't even know what the words are. You get the hair bounced up. They kind of wash it for you, and then they'll comb it out for you and just dry it. And it doesn't take long. They're very fast. So they're fast and dry. But I'll tell you what, she loves it. My wife loves that hair place. All the women in there love it. And there's a place just a few doors down that has a little driveway to it, and it's a foot place. Well, hands and foot. It's hands and feet. It's a mani-pedi place. They have a bunch of other stuff too, but manicure pedicure is the only thing I know. I can say that, but I wanted to get her 10 cards that pay for a sitting, a whole hair thing, and then get her 10 cards also in the foot place. And Bella Cure, that's the name of that one. Also not a sponsor, but it just interesting whenever I walk in there, because I've gotten this gift before for her. In fact, several times. I know she likes it. God bless her. She just likes the hair place, and she likes the foot place. And they don't like men coming in. And I'm just saying that I don't mind, but it's all women in there as customers, and the ones taking care of them on the hands and feet and on the hair are all women. So everyone's a woman in both places. So when you walk in as a man, well, it's sort of, you feel like a Russian weightlifter. You know what I mean? You feel like, boy, this guy is really visible as not one of us. And it's funny, even with all the dryers going and all the yakking going on, it seems to lower when I walk in, as if they're saying, and then I understand that, they're saying, why don't we hold off on talking about private things until this picklehead gets out of here? And I understand that. And so I went up to the hair place first, and I went up to the counter, and there was a young, slender, well-dressed, and attractive 17-year-old behind the counter, and she was a pretty young woman. And a couple of the women in there smiled at me with their hair being wetted and lotioned and all curled up and whatever they do there. And the truth is, I had trouble understanding the clerk. There were so many hair dryers blasting there, and every time she spoke, I'm sorry, yeah, what? What? And then by the third time you stop saying I'm sorry, you just say, what? What did you say? And, your face starts twisting a little, because who wants to say what that often? And you know what, though, I did? I got the 10 cards. She didn't have a gift card there. They don't have gift cards in those stores. They just have places, little tiny cards that have the name of the thing on it. And I wanted to get a card. I wanted to get a traditional Valentine's Day card where you get to open it up, and I wanted to write something in there, a memory of ours, something that, well, we both liked when we started going out or after we got married. And I wanted to think of something that was good to write down, to write about. And so she said, well, they didn't have any cards there. So I said, thank you. And I took the little bag with the folded tissue type things in it. And I walked out. And then I walked into the foot place. And there they also had, the clerk was young, slender, well-dressed, and attractive, and another 17-year-old. And, there was one woman from the hair place who recognized me because she just went into the foot place too, just about a minute ahead of me. And she was already she had the feet up, and they were already on her with the hands and the feet. And that's all fine, by the way. That's great stuff. They don't want me there. I don't need to be there. If they said to me, hey, how about you sit down and we'll work your toes a little bit. And I don't think I would need that. I mean, I like that they're doing it. I love the women love it, and it's good for them. Good for the people who have the store, who work in the store. Good for the people who come to the store. They don't need me there, and that's fine because I don't need my fingers worked on. There's nothing wrong with that, by the way. I just don't think I need to spend the time there. And so I did. I got 10 more there. I got 10 hair visits on 10 cards that were all paid for. And I got 10 mani-pedi visits on 10 cards that were also all paid for. But they also didn't have gift cards. They didn't have cards. That's the only thing I think of when I hear the word card. Something you take out of the envelope, you open up, and you say, oh, hi, and someone, he writes in, love you, and here's this thing for you, whatever it is, your birthday. And so, you know what, I did that. I took both gifts, and I brought them home, and I put them in the hallway closet underneath a couple of things. And obviously, don't want to, I'd like it to be a surprise. And so the next day, on Valentine's Day, here on the mainland, in my area, in my neighborhood, I wanted to go get, I had to go get some dinner stuff for our younger son. And so I was going to go to Ralph's and the supermarket, and my wife was still at work, and she was going to be home about 6 or 6:30, and maybe a little later. And well, folks, I went out to see a doctor. That's right, a doctor of mine. Oh, she's wonderful. She's full of, she speaks to angels and to God, and she's really wonderful to be part of. And I said to her, say, is there a card place in this area? As I was leaving, she said, there is, but you wouldn't like the ones they have. I don't think you'd like them. They're a little crazy and a little, they're very big on devils and things, like that. And I said, for Valentine's Day? And she said, you know what? She said, I have an idea. Go to Gelson's. It's a big market. It's one of the fancier supermarkets around. She said, there's one on Laurel Canyon. And I said, I know. Oh, how do you like that? I know that one. Now, my wife and I don't go there. We've never been there. I've been there once, say 11 years ago. I stopped in there. It's near one of the kids' schools, so I did go once, as I said, 11 years ago, but never since. And my wife doesn't go there. We don't go there together. She doesn't go there. I don't go there. It's not a store we happen to fancy or visit. And I left Therese, and I got in my car, and I went there, and I got to that. It's a big on a big corner lot, and I pulled in and parked, of course, like everything, like every store you go to. And I walked in, and I thought, well, if Therese says they have a good card section here, I bet I'm going to have exactly what I want. It won't take long, just take a minute or so, and I'll bet I'll get exactly what I like. And I started to go down one of the aisles, and I asked one of the folks in a uniform who works there, where they have cards and gift cards, and she pointed me to the aisle 11, I think it was. And as I got to the start of that aisle, there was, folks are moving all around. It's about 3:30 now, or 3:45. And there was a woman with a cart, and I just let her go and smiled, and we smiled at each other. And there was another woman behind her, and I just let her go again, and we smiled at each other. It's another main thing in life. I don't know why people don't smile more. And then I saw there was a little break. I couldn't see around the side there, but I started to go. And who do you think I run into? My wife, who is in the store that she never goes to, that I never go to. And she's got a cart full of things for dinner that night. And I looked at her, I said, holy mackerel. And she reacted to me to, whoa, what are you doing here? And I said, well, she said, and first she said, well, you know, we got out of work early today because tomorrow's going to be a late night on the script we're working on. And she said, what are you doing here? And I said, I'm here to get a card. And I was told that this is the great place to get cards. She said, oh, don't get a card for me. You know what? Don't get a card for. I don't want a card. I don't need a card. Don't get a card. Just go home. And I said to her, come on, I'm here already. I came here. Yes, it's for you. And why not? Who knows? You might like it. And I can write something nice on it that maybe, you know, that I'll think of. And she said again, don't do that. And I said, yes, come on, I'm going to go do it. I said, go take your stuff and go ahead. I'll see you at home. And I walked around in the card section there, and sure enough, they had, 20 or 30 of them sitting right there for Valentine's Day. And I saw one that just popped out. And I said, there's a nice one. It's red, and it had hearts on it and raised lettering and sort of in plastic and, happy Valentine's Day. And as I said, hearts, the word love was on there. And I said, look at that. And I took it with its red envelope and I walked up to the counter. And the same counter, my wife was still there. She's getting her stuff added up. So I just kind of chuckled and said I got online with her. And she turned around and saw me and just smiled and said, what do you do? She said, you want to get your card onto my stuff here? And I said, yes, but you can't look, so don't look. And she kind of shook her head with a smile. And the nice woman at the cash register she said, don't worry, I don't show her. And she was very sweet. So you know what, folks? I got an awfully nice card, and my wife beat me home. She always does. She's a fast driver, and not unsafe, but very close to it. But then I got home, and you know what? Well, that night at dinner for her and one of our kids and me, and I sent a message to our other son, the Marine, who's back now. I know I've told you about that, but he's doing very well. He's safe. He's back at the base, and he's been going to debriefings. And a couple of his Marine pals were going to take him, and they did, to a place to go snowboarding around here. And as Colonel Jeff said, boy, after all that time in the deserts in the Middle East, he's probably thrilled to see the snow. And I said, you know what? I bet you're right. And I sent him a note to him, and he sent a note to me. And when we were sitting there at the dinner, I brought out the bags from the hair place, and they were both gift wrapped in the foot place. Not so fancy, but I mean, they were nice bags, and they put, as I said, the folded tissue paper in it. And I gave her the card that I had made out. And you know what? I'll tell you, folks, it really helped me remember and realize what Valentine's Day is for, because I wrote to her on the card there, this is now one of my memories of St. Valentine's Day, and giving you this because we met at the store, we met at the supermarket, we met at Gelson's, and that's awfully nice. I'm glad we did. That will be my memory. Not anything else, and you made a nice dinner, and thank you, and that's great, but, there's really nothing else besides that memory of doing something sweet for someone you care about. And that's when Well, we had a nice dinner, and the three of us there, and then we cleaned up, and my son said, "Okay, I think I'm going to head back in and do some homework." And okay, and folks, just then, about a half hour later, I went downstairs because I wanted to know the story of Valentine. Who was Valentine? What was Valentine? And you know what? I looked it up. I popped that thing in the way you can do on the internet. I Googled it, I guess. And you know what, folks? It's a good story. Valentine was a priest, and he was very, very much he was a beloved priest, and he lived and worked in as a cleric in, well, that was still the Roman Empire, and that was 270 A.D. And he became well known because he broke a big rule from the Emperor of Rome. They didn't want their soldiers to get married. The Roman Empire decided they don't want soldiers married because they thought that might make them worse soldiers, just worse, that they'd be thinking about their wives and their families and their kids, and they didn't want that, and so they made a big rule. And as you know, when the Romans made rules, they were big rules, and they said no, the soldiers can never get married. And some of the soldiers there, and remember, they were soldiers, they were 15 or 17 or 21. They were, well, adults, but kid adults. And they started coming to Valentine. They would come with their girlfriends because they were all sad. They wanted to get married, and they wanted it very much. And Valentine started marrying them. He made sort of a secret routine where he would have a couple of them come to his room there, and later at night, around midnight, and he would marry them, and it was a sacred ceremony. It was a full ceremony, and they were really happy, and they were thrilled. He married them completely, and they were awfully glad to have Valentine in their lives, and he did that over and over and over again, so many times that the emperor at the time, Claudius II, heard about this. Well, that's the kind of thing that's going to get out anyway. And he, I was going to say invited, but I don't think those were invitations. He said to Valentine, "Let's go, come over here. I want to meet you." And Valentine went over, and the emperor was so impressed by Valentine because he walked in with a smile and his head held high, and it was full of faith. And no one, apparently, I said this to the colonel, I guess no one met the emperor smiling. And that's probably, you know that, and I know that. People went in there, they were probably shaking like leaves. They were just, come on, it's the Emperor of Rome. How many of those meetings go well? And this one went well. The Claudius II was very impressed by Valentine. And in fact, he was so impressed by Valentine, he wanted to convert him back to the Roman faith of all the gods and, the Roman view of the gods and that sort of thing. And Valentine said, "No, I have my faith, and I'm not going to change it back to yours." And in fact, Valentine then tried to convert Claudius II to his faith, to Christianity. And so this is one of those moments where you want to say, if you were a friend of Valentine's, or if his agent went there with him and just might have said, "You know what, I would avoid making the emperor really mad, like saying no to everything he wants, and then you tell him what you want." And in fact, the agent would probably say, "Listen, I'm going to go to the bathroom, and as soon as I get out of here, I'm going to run like mad, because I think you're going to get us both killed here." And that's what happened. Claudius II got really mad at Valentine, which you don't want to have happen, and he put him in jail there. And those were not, well, jail is never nice, I guess, but those were not good places to be. And then Valentine was executed shortly thereafter. And that was that with Valentine. And a couple of his people that he married went to see him and tried to go see him, soldiers with their new wives, and it was that's very touching. But he was executed, and you know what, folks? The 14th of February, Valentine's Day. Well, he was eventually made a saint, I think, a few hundred years later, and so it's Saint Valentine's Day. But that was the day he was executed, the 14th of February. And that's his day. In other words, Valentine's Day. That's forever his day. And in the centuries to follow, well, it became that, see, Valentine was very much in favor of the romance and the faith that went into these young couples committing to each other and getting married, which is what they wanted. And they began to do what he liked so much. All the young couples following his life would give each other gifts on St. Valentine's Day. And they made cards. That was what they liked, and that was what became so popular, and that was the tradition. That became what we are today. They would make cards, they would draw things on them, and, well, they didn't have art stores then, but they made some very, very lovely cards, and that became the thing for couples to do. And the young husband or the young fella, the boyfriend, would make a nice card for his girlfriend, and she would make one for him. And you see, folks, that's part of the big story of Valentine's Day. Now, all know that there is, of course, the St. Valentine's Day Massacre that was from Chicago in 1929. And, that's where Al Capone had, 7 of Bugs Moran's guys murdered in their garage there. That was one of their headquarters. He was trying to get Moran, but there were 7 guys in there instead, and they were all shot. They were lined up against a wall, and they were machine gunned to death. And 2 of Capone's men, by the way, were dressed as cops. They brought them in. They were hitmen that he brought in just to do this. They were from out of town, so they wouldn't be recognized. Ironically, Capone's men who shot everyone in that garage are probably on the same level in hell as Claudius II. And who knows what kind of stories they share. But, folks, it struck me that that's the story of Valentine. That's the real story of St. Valentine's Day. And you know what the story is? That get a card. I got a card. And I wrote something to my wife about how I'll always remember meeting her in that store when neither of us ever went to that store. And that's kind of an amazing thing. That's almost a little miracle in itself. We never go there. If I had been 5 seconds late or 2 minutes early or anything, we wouldn't have walked right into each other. I don't think that's just an accident, do you? Sure, sometimes we make goofy things out of certain holidays, and that's okay too, I suppose. But this holiday will always make me think of getting a nice card from my wife and writing about how we bumped into each other in a supermarket we never go to. And, we know the same things. Homer is Homer, and Pluto is a planet. So remember, folks, as always, if If you walked out of bed today and had a job to go to and a home to come back to and someone there who cares about you, folks, the game's over and you've won. And that's as true for me as anything else. Have a great Valentine's Day and the week following it. And we'll see you here next time.